We welcome those of you who are joining us live stream. For those of you who are here, please take a moment to be sure that your cell phones have been turned off, not to disturb the sacred funeral ceremony. In a moment, the rabbi is going to approach the family to perform the ancient ceremony of Kriya. So for those of you in the first row, please gather around Bonnie as the rabbi approaches for the ceremony, then we'll begin the funeral service. Also, if there are seats next to anybody, we want to make sure no one has to stand, so please let some people know where the seats are so they can be seated. This time, Rabbi Friedman from North Suburban Synagogue, Bethel, will begin the sacred funeral ceremony.
Friends, we gather today to pay kavod acharon, final loving farewell to Jerry Lebovitz. And we're not sure where to begin to tell this wonderful life story. It would just take us too much time to share our memories, our recollections, his influence and inspiration for you and for all of us. If we all took our turns, we would just be here for so long. So we can't say everything today, it's impossible. But today we can paint a sketch. We can paint a sketch in loving, vivid, bright colors of those who knew him and loved him to remind us of the best of him. And for those of us who didn't know him, who are here today in support of family who loved him, to share with you what he was, who he was, why he meant so much to this family. And when we're not sure where to begin to tell a life story, our people have opened our book, our scripture, our Tanakh, for words of wisdom, guidance, inspiration, for words to begin the conversation when they didn't know where to begin to tell the life story. And so I open with the 23rd Psalm. Mizmor LeDavid, Adonai ro'i lo echzar, bino teshi yarbitzeni, ame minuchot yinahaleni, nafshi yeshovev, yanochenech maglet tzedek lema'an shemo. Gam ki elei pegetz amavet, lo irava ki atay madi, shiv decha mishantecha, hema yenachamuni, ta'aroch avanai shulchan, neged zorai, di shanta v'shem en roshi, kosi rivaya, ach tov chesed yirtifuni, kol yemei chayai, v'shavti bebeit Adonai, le'orech yamim. Let's read the English together. We open a folder to the second page to recite the 23rd Psalm. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointed my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. I continue with a selection from Kohelet, the book of Ecclesiastes, which speaks about the special nature of time. There's a season set for everything, a time for every experience under heaven, a time for planting and a time for reaping, a time for keeping, a time for discarding, a time for loving and a time for hating, a time for embracing and a time for refraining, a time for slaying and a time for healing, a time for laughing and a time for weeping, a time for dancing, a time for wailing, a time for birthing and a time for dying, a time for speaking and a time for silence, a time for seeking and a time for losing. And this moment, this day, is the time to recall the very best of Jerry, to tell his stories, to think about him, to recall him in love. It's also a moment, the time, to give a big hug to this family who is hurting because they miss him so much, because he meant so much to them. We think of his family, we give them all of our support and love and strength. His beloved wife, Bonnie, his beloved children, Jill with Stephen, Daniel with Alana and Paul. To his beloved grandchildren, Ari, Zoe, Nina, David with fiancé Lauren, Rebecca and Laney. To his beloved sister, Lenore, recalling the late Edward, and recalling the late Pauline and the late Sonny. And his beloved sister-in-law, Pamelyn, recalling the late David and the late Michael. And so many nieces and nephews who are lucky to call him Uncle Jerry. At this time, we recall the tributes in love and reflections. We invite those who knew him best, who loved him the most, to share their memories and their reflections and what he meant to them so much, first his family and then friends. I first invite his daughter Jill to share her words.
My dad was a man of few words who probably wouldn't have had the patience to listen to this eulogy. To honor him, I will make this short and sweet. My dad was kind, loving, generous, proud, hardworking, impatient, stubborn, funny without really knowing it, non-judgmental, drama-free, and a real family man. Some of his favorite things were being with his family, working, Chinese food, hot dogs, hot fudge sundaes, cigars, massages, back scratches, head scratches, parties, especially in his honor, receiving presents, watching Blue Blood marathons on Wednesdays, Costco runs, his pet goldfish Bob, although he would have denied that. A satisfying bowel movement. Bears games, cool cars, TV shows about animals, Playboy magazine. And no, he did not read the articles. Talking about the pawn shop and having everyone and anyone swim in his pool. He had a few favorite FAQs, frequently asked questions. Where did you park? What are we gonna do with all the garbage? What's new at the store? You busy? How many miles are on the Thunderbird? And to his kids, grandkids, when are you getting married? If you only met my dad in recent years, you wouldn't believe that he was once a pretty large guy. Looking at old photos, I'd forgotten how big and tall he once was. And he didn't always have that beautiful white and shiny hair. In the 80s, my cousin Nancy would give him a perm with the rollers and chemicals in our kitchen in Skokie. Growing up, he made breakfast on Sundays, got us off to school each day, did the laundry, picked me up at my grandparents' after Hebrew school, and worked a lot. He taught me how to ride a bicycle, and I can still hear him yelling, pedal, pedal, pedal. He bought me a stick shift car and then had to teach me how to drive it. And when he had the clothing stores, he would go to New York on buying trips and bring me home Elton John albums. Dad never had a bad word to say about anyone. He was loved by so many extended family members, especially his favorite Uncle Jerry, friends, customers, and neighbors. I want to extend my gratitude to his wonderful caregivers, Natasha, Monica, and Anna. Your caring and devotion to our parents will continue to be invaluable. Although he sometimes had a funny way of showing it, he loved my mom deeply and depended on her for just about everything for 61 years. Together, they've created a legacy and their 6 wonderful grandchildren, who I'm certain will carry on the traditions of our close-knit family. I promise you, Dad, that together we will all take very good care of Mom. Rest peacefully, my daddy-o. I miss you so much already.
Jerry's impact was felt so deeply not only by his children, but his many grandchildren, who thankfully lived long enough and usually close enough to home to spend so much time with him that he was an integral part of their lives as well. I invite forward his grandchildren, Zoe and David, to share their memories.
You go first.
Okay. I had let some friends of mine know that my grandpa had passed away on Friday. And one of the many kind responses that stuck out to me was that the man lived a good life. These past few days have provided me an opportunity to listen to stories, look at old photos, and hear from a great network of extended family and close friends. As a husband, a father, a grandfather, an uncle, or a friend, Jerry played an important role in the lives of many people in this room. I think there's a lot to be said that a man of such few words could have such an impact on so many people. The earliest memories I have of my grandpa generally revolve around the store. Whether it was when my sisters and cousins and I would sleep over at my grandparents' and he would leave for work before the sun came up, or when he would greet me happily from behind the counter when I would come to work throughout my childhood. His business was very important to him. My grandpa passing away on a Friday so that we didn't have to close the store on an extra day is exactly how he would have wanted to go, and it was a very fitting final gesture. His energy and concern for the store was not for nothing. He built a business that has supported multiple generations of his family, dozens of employees, and became a staple on the west side of Chicago. I'm extremely lucky to be the beneficiary of his dedication and hard work. It cannot be understated how big of an impact Jerry had on his customers, and on any given day, it would not surprise me to hear from multiple people asking about him, whether it's, "How's Jerry doing?" Tell Jerry I say hello. Let me know next time he comes in so we can come say hi. I know your grandpa, he helped me out so many times, or my favorite from the old ladies, Jerry would have given me a better deal. It is abundantly clear that even being years removed from working full-time, the community still has him squarely in their hearts and minds. I have tremendous respect for the reputation he earned among his customers, and I hope that I could have a fraction of the impact that he has had. As I've gotten older, it's much easier to recognize how special it is that so many family and friends would come together on such a consistent basis, and it makes me happy knowing that we all spent such a considerable amount of time together. It was always clear to me that even without saying much, it was fulfilling for him to see his people in front of him talking, laughing, and having a good time, even if he wasn't listening or paying attention to what we were talking about. My grandpa was lucky enough to be surrounded by a very patient wife, extremely caring kids, and 6 grandkids that loved him and everything that made him who he was. I will always have the memories of going to the Bears games with him, his not very subtle remarks about getting married and wanting great-grandchildren, getting him high on vacation, and talking to him on the phone sometimes multiple times a day because he wanted to know what was going on at the store. As much as I still wish that he was here with us today, I take comfort knowing that there is no doubt in my mind that the man did live a good life.
Okay. Papa, Papa, Papa. Oh yeah, I must have driven you crazy with how many times I said that to you, especially over the last week. I feel so lucky to have been able to gotten to grow up with my papa. He was grandpa to 5 grandkids, but papa to me. We had a special bond, mainly consisting of him sitting pretty quietly or asking me how's business while I gave him a massage and scratched his head. I've always tried to get him to admit that I was his favorite, but he would never admit it. I even tried to get him to slip up twice last week while he was in the hospital, even in the emergency room, but he wouldn't budge, and he would always say that we were all his favorite. I think he knew this, but we shared the same favorite summer activity. There was nothing that he loved more than people swimming in his pool, and there was nothing that I loved more than being there. He loved to sit in his chair in the sun all day long, watching TV, probably Blue Bloods, while we just swam. He wanted to entertain everyone while being no entertainment of himself. He didn't talk. He invited all the neighborhood kids over and always wanted our family and friends to be at his house. He was a man of few words, but you could always tell how happy he was to have you there. I recently left my job to take some time off over the summer, and when my friends asked me what I was looking forward to the most, in my time off, I told them to spend time with my grandma and papa at their pool. And they laughed and told me that most people my age would say something like spending time in the city or going out and hanging out with friends, but the truth is, I enjoyed being with them the most. All of us grandkids lucked out. Our papa was always around. He was at every event, every celebration, just everything, always giving us a little shimmy, signaling for us to come over and give him a massage. Our grandparents and Auntie Rhonda and Uncle Sherwin used to take just the kids on vacation to Mexico or on a cruise, no parents allowed. One of the cruises, we nominated my grandma and papa to be the old married couple on the Newlywed Game Show. The way that Papa answered questions about Grandma and drew a portrait of her that looked just like a giraffe got the whole auditorium screaming and laughing. He was hilarious without ever having to try, and he always loved attention. He always looked so cute. His outfits were always layered and fashionable, to absolutely no credit of his own. Just for my grandma, he looked adorable. He was also very obedient. I was constantly nagging him to smile or make a funny face or throw up a peace sign just so I could take a photo. And boy, am I happy that I have those now. As most of you know, my grandma and papa knew they were getting married after only one date. There's nothing that he wanted more than weddings and babies. He was taken away too soon. Sorry. Leaving us before David and Lauren's wedding, before I had a chance to introduce him to a boyfriend, before we could give him great grandkids. But I find comfort in knowing that he left us before he ever suffered. His health had been declining, and I feel so grateful that he never had to lose himself because he would have hated that. He lived a crazy life over the past 85 years, and he was the most special. We will miss him more than anything, and our family will never be the same. I love you forever, Papa.
Jerry's impact and influence was felt most deeply by his family, of course, but it extended beyond that to his extended family and to his friends. I invite forward now Pam, his sister-in-law, and Hershey, an old friend.
My brother Jerry, because he was more than my brother-in-law, from the day Bonnie told us she was getting married, decided on their second date, he was part of the fabric of my life. It wasn't just having thousands of meals and holidays together. We traveled the world with Jerry and Bonnie, having some of the greatest adventures. We went to Africa on a photo safari. When he was asked if he wanted a beer, he would say, "Is the beer cold?" "Oh, yes, sir," he was told. Nope, it was always lukewarm. Sailing in the Caribbean twice, to driving through Europe twice, to at least 25 cruises, driving to the Grand Canyon via the Corn Palace in Mitchell, South Dakota, and Wall Drugs. The first driving trip we took was from Amsterdam through the Brenner Pass down into Italy, as far as Naples and up to Paris. On that trip, after a few days, Jerry said to David, "You know, Dave, if you're tired of driving, Eddie'll drive." Not Jerry. He volunteered Eddie Stetzer. We laughed about that all throughout the years. It was one of our favorite Jerryisms. Then there was the leather jacket issue in Florence, a story for another time. There was the meteor crater he and David insisted on seeing, so we didn't have time to go to Santa Fe. By the time we got there, all the shops and galleries were closed. As for the sailing trips, I see him standing at the bow of our sailboat, watching to make sure the anchor held while David maneuvered the boat. At night, he and Eddie would toss hot dogs in the air. Before they could hit the water, the bats would swoop down and snatch them. And at a resort in Mexico, every night after dinner, Jerry fed the fish in the koi pond with pilfered dinner rolls. He was a big man with a kind and loving nature. He was there for you whenever you needed him. He always stood beside you, ready to lend a hand or just give you support. He was someone you could always count on. Jerry Lebovitz loved my sister, their children and grandchildren. He was half of the team that raised his kids to be the fine, honorable, and kind people they are. He epitomizes the crown of a good name. Maybe he be folded into God's embrace, and may he watch over my sister, their children and grandchildren, and bring them peace.
Jerry and I knew of each other since the 50s, but we became very close friends in 1970 when we both were working on the west side of Chicago. Jerry was at a clothing store, and I was a pimp. I was a pimp. No, not really. I worked in a clothing store too. As the years went on, we became very, very close. We would have very short conversations. His conversation was, how's business? And my conversation was, let's talk about something else. But we never did. We had a card game, monthly card game that we all loved to do. There was 7 of us that started it, and we used to pick up a player here and there. But we were a hell of a group. Jerry never talked. Ira never shut up. Marshall always argued. Norty couldn't see. Eddie Stetzer couldn't hear. I had trouble talking. And Bob Hayden just sat there and raked in the money. We loved that card game. So I'll be brief now. I just wanted to say, when you finally get up to where you're going, Jerry, remember, sit up straight and take your Chinese food hot.
I did not have the blessing of knowing Jerry well, but after learning about his life and his family, his values and priorities, I wish he were a part of my own family. As we heard, he never had a bad way to say about anybody, and he had the strongest work ethic imaginable. His life truly centered around his work. A lifelong entrepreneur, he spent his life in retail, selling clothes, running a hot dog stand, running an ice cream truck, then owning and running the pawn store. And that became the family business, as his 2 sons and grandsons still run the shop. And even after he had retired, he always wanted to know how the store was doing. But in doing so, he equally dedicated to his work and to his customers. The people who walked through the stores were most important. And part of this was he really enjoyed the discipline of a job, going back to his first job at age 9, of delivering meat and taking it so seriously. But the deepest part, his true motivation, was to provide all he could for his family. That's what truly fueled him every day, more than anything else. Work made him happy, but providing for his family was his greatest satisfaction. His family loved him back with so much in return. Lenore remembers him as a wonderful, wonderful brother. It took Bonnie exactly 1 day to realize she wanted to marry him. They would be married for 61 years. It might have been the brand new white convertible he drove. It might have been she knew his family in advance. But most of it was because she sensed his deep kindness, his deep sweetness. And beneath his quiet demeanor, she sensed a life partner who would let her lead in many ways. Everyone here is so grateful that Jerry picked up the phone that day to call Bonnie to go out to a movie as their first date. Bonnie says, he was a quiet guy, except on the day he called me, he was not so quiet. Together they would travel the world, literally exploring most of the world's continents. And for his parents' 50th anniversary, they all went to Israel together. They enjoyed traveling with his sister, as well as their machatanim. Not every family can make that work, but Bonnie and Jerry did. Of course, Bonnie and Jerry spent most of their time at home, where they raised 3 children. And if the weather cooperated, you could count on him taking them swimming, either in the backyard pool or in the lake. And his passion for the water, for swimming, would endure for the rest of his life. His pool was open to everybody, his family, the neighborhood kids. And this would always make him smile, a smile which was contagious. If they were lucky, he would also barbecue for the guests. He was a master on the grill. All the holidays were important to him and his family, his birthday, Jewish holidays, national holidays, because they brought the family together. Not just a few people around the table, but often 40 or more. The food would be abundant, but Jerry would wonder why there wasn't more. And despite his quiet demeanor, he was really a people person, and he loved bringing family together in their home. That was simply the best. There was something in yesterday's Torah reading, Parshat Korach, that reminds me of him. Parshat Korach speaks of a man named Korach, who famously challenges Moses publicly. He says, Moses, what makes you so special? Why do you see yourself as superior to the rest of us? Aren't we all holy? And here is where Korach was wrong. Moses did not appoint himself to be leader of the Jewish people. God did. And despite Moses' leadership role, Moses really did not have an ego because he saw himself as a provider, as someone beholden to the people, not on top of them, and that kept him humble. Like Moses, Jerry's outlook grounded him with a good sense of humility. He saw himself as a provider more than anything. I'm also reminded of a story told in the Talmud about a man named Choni HaMa'agel. And the legend is this rabbi was walking down a path in the woods, and he saw an old man kind of stooped over the side planting a tree. And he says, "What are you doing? What tree are you planting?" And the old man says, "This is a carob tree." And how long does it take a carob tree to grow, to become beautiful and green and verdant and peak maturity? It takes 70 years, 7-0. And Choni didn't understand. 70 years? You're not going to be here in 70 years. You're not going to see it or enjoy its shade or its fruit or sit against its trunk. Why are you planting this tree if you're not going to be here to enjoy it? And the man smiled and said, "Just as my ancestors planted for me, so I plant for my children." And Choni didn't really understand. He kept going down the path. He felt a little tired, so he lay down on the ground, and he woke up after a nap. A nap that was 70 years, says the legend. He woke up and he turned around. He sees this beautiful, amazing carob tree and this young man next to it. He says, "Young man, are you the man who planted this tree?" That was my grandfather. And only in that moment did Choni understand. Did Choni understand that each of us is the product of those who come before us. Each of us is the product of the roots that they begin and the ideas and the influence, the impact that they help us grow and become who we are. It starts before us, not with us. And we are lucky for all of us, some more and some less, had Jerry in our lives to plant the seed, to water, to tend it, to let it grow, so we can become who we are. And that was Jerry's greatest gift. Yehi Zichro Baruch, may his memory be a blessing. Amen. I invite you to please rise, if you're able. We continue with the El Maleh Memorial Prayer. El Maleh Vachamim, Shochen Bamramim, Hametzeh Menucha Nechana, Tachak Kanfei Shechina, B'malot Kedoshim Tovim, Kezerah Harakim Asirim, Et Nishmat, Chaim Yoel Aharon ben David, Shehalacha Olamaho, Began Eden Tehem Menuchato, Ana Bar Harachamim Hastirehu Betzetek Nafeh Haramim, Utzro B'Solim Nishmato, Adonai Hu Nahalato, V'Anu Peshalom Amishkavo, V'Namar Amen. El Maleh Vachamim, exalted and compassionate God, grant infinite rest in your sheltering presence among the holy and pure to the soul of Chaim Yoel Aharon ben David, Jerry Lebovitz, who has gone to his eternal home. Merciful One, we ask that a loved one find perfect peace in your eternal embrace. May his soul be bound up in the bond of life. May he rest in peace. And let us say, Amen.
Ladies and gentlemen, the interment service will continue at Shalom Memorial Park Cemetery, located at 1700 West Rand Road in Arlington Heights. The family will be at the Lebovitz residence at 45 Barnard Lane in Highland Park following the interment till 8:30 p.m. Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday from 6 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. Minyan will be at 7:30 p.m. each night. Memorial contributions to Magen David Adom would be appreciated. That information is on the service folder that you received upon entering the chapel. If you did not get one, we have them as you exit the chapel. For those of you who are joining us online, all that information can be found on the funeral home's website. For those of you who will be driving in the funeral procession to the cemetery, The procession will be forming in our parking lot. Please obtain an orange safety funeral sticker to place on the right-hand side of your windshield. Have your bright lights and hazard lights on at all times. For additional measures of safety, we will be providing a car in the back of the procession to hopefully keep other cars from entering the procession. Please use your horn liberally as you're going through the intersections, and please do not speak or text on your cellular phone while driving to the cemetery. The following people have been asked to serve as pallbearers. When I call your name, please stand next to Jerry's casket. Steve Hoffman, David Lebovitz, Ari Hoffman, Larry Herskovitz, Dale Kaplan, Michael Kaplan, Sherwin Dubin, and Hershey Blitzstein. At this time, I invite everyone to please rise and stand in place as we escort the casket of Jerry Lebovitz, along with his family and Rabbi Friedman, from the chapel. Then you may return to your cars.